I'm 25 and live in the middle of Long Island with two roommates. Both of them were out of town on a trip to the Hamptons for the weekend. I was looking forward to some peace and quiet. The house was old but cozy. We had all lived together for the past 2 years, so I was pretty comfortable with being home alone. Friday night, I decided to relax with a book and a glass of wine. Max, golden retriever, laid at my feet and kept me company. After a few hours of reading, at around 11 p.m., I decided to go to bed. As I was brushing my teeth, I heard a thud from downstairs. I paused, listening, but the house was silent again. I figured it was just the house settling and went to bed. I know it sounds cliche, but it does this sometimes, and I've gotten pretty used to it. Hours later at 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of Max growling softly. It was at the bedroom door, his ears up. I listened too, but heard nothing. I finally got up and opened the door, looking into the dark hallway. The house was quiet. I checked all the rooms upstairs. Everything seemed fine. Max eventually calmed down and we went back to bed. The next morning, I went downstairs and saw something horrifying. The back door was slightly open. I felt a chill down my spine. I was positive I had locked it before bed. I checked the house again, but nothing seemed to be missing. If someone really did break in, they surely would have moved something or taken something, right? That's what I told myself, and I locked the door and tried to forget about the incident. Later that same night, I double-checked all the locks before going to bed. Couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Max was uneasy too, pacing around the room. Eventually though, we both fell asleep. At 3 a.m., I woke up to a scraping sound. My heart pounded. The noise was coming from the kitchen. I grabbed my phone and quietly went downstairs, Max following me. In the kitchen, everything looked normal. The back door was still locked, which made me really happy. As I turned to go back upstairs though, I heard the scraping noise again. It was louder, coming from the pantry. My blood ran cold. I slowly opened the pantry door, but it was empty. The sound stopped. Feeling scared, I decided to sleep on the couch with Max. If a noise in the pantry happened again, Max would be right here to go see what's happening. I left a small lamp on. The rest of the night was quiet, but Max and I barely slept. To make things even worse, the next evening, my neighbor Mrs. Collins called. She had seen a man around our house the night before. My heart raced. She described him, tall, messy, wearing dark clothes. I was thinking about calling the police, but after looking around my property, I still couldn't see anything. Also, we didn't have any security cameras or anything like that, so I didn't really have anything to go to the police with. I thanked her for the tip and promised to be careful. That night, I made sure all the windows and doors were locked. I even put a chair against the back door. Max was on edge, his ears up. I kept a flashlight and my phone nearby as I tried to sleep. At 2:30 a.m., I woke up to faint movement. My heart pounded. The noise was coming from inside the house, from downstairs. Max was growling softly, staring at the bedroom door. I got out of bed, flashlight in hand, and went to the top of the stairs. The rustling sound was clear, coming from the living room. My hands shook as I went down the stairs. In the living room, everything seemed normal. However, I turned towards the kitchen. Suddenly, I heard a soft thud behind me. I turned around, shining the light under the couch, but saw nothing. I checked the whole house again, starting with the basement. The door was slightly open. I was certain I closed it before. I went down the stairs, flashlight lighting the way. The basement was cold and damp, filled with old boxes and furniture. I checked every corner, found nothing. I went back upstairs and checked the windows and doors again. Feeling more scared than ever, I decided to bring Max back to the bedroom and lock the door. As I lay in bed, trying to calm down, I heard the scraping sound again. This time it was coming from under the bed. My blood ran cold. Max was growling softly, his eyes fixed on the bed. I slowly leaned over the edge, flashlight shaking in my hand. Then I saw it. A pair of eyes staring back at me. I froze. There was someone under my bed. I slowly pulled back, trying to think. My phone was on the nightstand, just out of reach. If I moved too quickly, whoever was under the bed might attack. I needed to stay calm. I whispered to Max to stay quiet. He seemed to understand, staying still. Taking a deep breath, I slowly reached for my phone. My fingers brushed the edge of it, but before I could grab it, a hand shot out from under the bed and grabbed my wrist. I screamed and jerked away, knocking the phone to the floor. The person under the bed started to crawl out. I saw a man with wild eyes, dirty and messy. I kicked at him, trying to get away. Max sprang into action, barking and snapping at the intruder. I then swatted at Max, but my dog was relentless. I managed to get to my feet and grab the phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. As I was doing this though, the man lunged at me. I threw a lamp at him, hitting his shoulder. He growled and backed off, glaring at us with wild eyes. I took the chance to run. Both Max and I ran out the door and didn't stop until we reached the car. I threw Max in and we drove away fast, not looking back. As we sped down the road, I glanced at my dog. He was panting but seemed okay. I reached over and petted him, trying to calm us both. We didn't stop driving until we were at the police station. I told the police everything would happen. The police later went back to our house. Everything was trashed. This intruder left a mess everywhere and a lot of stuff was stolen, including our TV. I told my roommates and they were just as pissed as me, but they were glad I was okay. We installed cameras around the house and are now a lot more serious about security. They never found the guy, and I never stay home alone anymore. It was the first weekend of summer, and my parents had left for a business trip, leaving me alone in the house. I was 17 and had been looking forward to some independence for weeks. I had plans to catch up on reading and just enjoy the peace and quiet of having the house to myself. Our home was a 2-story place in the quiet neighborhood. A bit old, but I grew up here, so I absolutely loved it. Friday evening, I decided to start my weekend with a horror movie marathon. I made some popcorn, dimmed the lights, and settled into the couch. Halfway through the first movie, I heard a faint noise coming from upstairs. I paused my movie and listened. The house was silent again, so I shrugged it off as just the house settling and continued watching. Later that night, around 11 p.m., I was brushing my teeth when I heard what sounded like footsteps on the second floor. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the sound continued. I grabbed the flashlight and cautiously made my way upstairs. I checked all the rooms, but everything looked normal. Feeling a bit dumb, I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps again, this time louder and seemingly closer. My heart raced as I listened carefully. The footsteps were coming from the hallway, right outside my room. I got out of bed, grabbed my phone, and slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the sound continued, now coming from the attic. I decided to lock myself in my room and call my best friend Mike. When Mike first picked up, we barely even talked, and it was pretty clear that I had just woken him up. But when I told him what was happening and how serious it was, he became focused pretty quickly. He suggested I call the police, but I hesitated at first, not wanting to overreact. Instead, Mike offered to come over and stay the night. Relieved, I agreed and waited for him, listening to the unsettling noises above me. Mike arrived about 15 minutes later. We decided to check the attic together. Grabbed some flashlights and a couple of baseball bats for good measure. As we climbed up the attic ladder, the noises stopped. The attic was just dusty and filled with old furniture and boxes. We looked around but found nothing unusual. Just as we were about to leave though, Mike noticed something odd. A piece of the attic floor was out of place, like it had been moved recently. It might sound weird to notice something that specific, but Mike came over to my house all the time. We often went upstairs to grab old board games and DVDs from the attic. We lifted the floorboard and found a small compartment underneath. Inside, there were some old clothes and a few empty food cans. My blood ran cold as I realized someone must have been living and hiding in our attic. We quickly climbed down and locked the attic door, deciding it was definitely time to call the police. Police arrived and searched the attic and the rest of the house, but found no one. They advised us to stay alert and promised to patrol the area more frequently. I called my parents too, but for some reason they didn't seem too worried. They thought that it would be impossible for someone to somehow have stayed unnoticed in our house for even just a few days, and that honestly made sense to me. Mike stayed over though, and we spent the rest of the night in the living room, too on edge to sleep. I was definitely scared, but after talking to the police and with my parents, I was feeling a lot better. The next day, we installed new locks and even set up a basic alarm system using some old hardware Mike had laying around. We tried to relax and enjoy the rest of the day, but the uneasiness stayed. That night, as we were getting ready to sleep, we heard the familiar sound of footsteps, now coming from the basement. Mike and I exchanged nervous looks at each other, but we decided to go investigate. Feeling confident, we grabbed our old baseball bats again and slowly made our way downstairs. This time, the basement door was slightly open, but I forgot whether or not I left it like that. We pushed it open and shined our flashlights inside to make sure everything was okay. We slowly made our way down the stairs, which were, of course, creaking loudly below us. Once we got to the bottom, I pulled the string to the small light bulb we had overhead. I could finally see a little bit of the basement, but it still wasn't that much. There were some old boxes lying around with a bunch of my childhood toys, but not much else. Then, out of nowhere, Mike screamed. In the dim light, we saw a figure moving in the shadows. The figure turned to face us, revealing a man with wild eyes and crazy hair. He grinned, showing yellow teeth, and said, "You shouldn't have come down here." We shouted at him to leave, but he took a step forward. Mike swung the bat, hitting the man's arm. He let out a loud, crazy scream and lunged at us. We fought him off as best as we could and managed to push him back into the basement, slamming the door and locking it. We ran upstairs and called the police again. As we were waiting for the police to arrive, we heard constant banging on the basement door. Mike and I were practically on the verge of tears. After what seemed like hours, but was probably just a few minutes, the police finally arrived and arrested the man. They discovered that he had been living in our house for weeks, moving between the attic and the basement. How they didn't notice this when they last came, I still have no idea. Our attic and basement were actually connected by a large, dusty staircase behind our walls that we hadn't touched for years. How he got in without us noticing was still a mystery. One of us must have left the house unlocked one day while we were all gone, and he went inside. The police took him away, and I was left feeling horrible. It goes without saying, but my parents cut their trip short and came home the next day. We installed a professional security system and had the house thoroughly inspected again. The experience left me shaken, but I was grateful to be safe and have Mike by my side. From that day on, I never spent another night alone without checking every corner of the house and making sure all the locks were secure.